Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Nkaissery has in the past week given orders to chiefs that have left many Kenyans baffled. Political spin masters now maintain that the threats by Nkaissery to sack members of the provincial administration who aid voter listing in areas perceived to be opposition strongholds amounts to abuse of power or taking Kenya back to the era of chiefdoms. Analyst Martin Ndati says that chiefs are civil servants and are supposed to serve all despite political affiliations. Many are questioning whether the country is going back to the dark days of the Nyayo era.
Mimi ndio waziri, kalamu yangu nikisema chief aende nyumbani, anaenda. Hata hakuna appeal. Every chief, my friend, babu president akikosa, mimi ninaenda wapi? Nyumbani. Na kwa sababu hao watu nimekuwa nikiwasafisha kidogo kidogo.
Right, and I want also to wrap in our guests who are already here to tell us, are we hacking back to the chiefdoms era where we see the provincial administration machinery really working, especially at this time of the voter registration? We have with us Dr. Agnes Zani. She is the Secretary General of ODM and also nominated Senator. Also, we have Dr. Farah Maalim, who is the former Speaker of the National Assembly, and Dr. Shem Ochuodho, who is a global leader of Kenya Diaspora Alliance. All right.
I'm sandwiched between two doctors.
That's a quiet title. Imperative.
This is incoming. Even last week, I think.
You did the same.
Yeah.
I promise.
It's a honorary doctorate.
I promise. No, I'm not going for honorary. I'm going for an academic one. Very soon.
It's a sign of good times.
All right, let's begin with you, Dr. Zani. Of course, you've been to Mashinani and
Yes.
chiefs. They've been walking about also with their identity cards. And so
Yes.
many people have been expressing frustrations that why are the chiefs doing this? Do you
Yes.
think they should?
No, let me start by saying first that the sort of ultimatums that are being given to chiefs and the manner with which they're being done and the skewed manner in which it's been done is what is worrying. Because at the end of the day, we expect the chiefs to be able to give service to everybody.
Yes.
They have a role, yes, to do, but they need to be able to perform that with equitability across the board. So that if they're the ones giving ID cards, I think that's one proposal only that has been given. Other proposals have been given because the main thing is that there are so many IDs that are collected.
Yes.
The key thing is these IDs are considered as voters, basically. These are people who should be registered as voters, can easily register as voters, and they haven't. And that's what is causing concern. So mechanisms, and I think this is one mechanism. Other mechanisms that have been, for example, suggested is that even lists be published or these lists or IDs be distributed, for example, even to ward chairs of various political parties, because these are people who can be identified so that these IDs can actually get to them. But I think also that begs the other question, why would we have so many IDs that haven't been collected? And various conspiracy theories come up as well, that many of these IDs are actually not where the people who should be given those IDs are. So we could have a bunch of IDs completely very far from where the isolated people who are meant to be getting those IDs should be getting them from. So I think, yes, the chiefs have the power, but then I think that power needs to be distributed across board.
Right, but of course, opposition, you've been taking issues with the CS, who is warning the chiefs not to work with the opposition on facilitation of this voter registration using the ID cards.
Yeah, they should.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, we went to the dark days long before. I mean, it's not just starting now. I mean, there's no question about that. And the other bit that we know and we have seen for a fact is that there's a lot of double registration. That's why they're going for the manual, including registration of the former vice president and the current leader of my party, my leader,
Yes.
Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. We tried we checked his on the BVR in Wajir, and lo and behold, what is there? Salome Njoroge. You get my point?
Yes.
The same ID number. So our fears have been confirmed that indeed there's so many fake IDs that have been distributed all over the country. There probably could be 1 million of those ones, and those people are going to vote twice because the center is different. The ID number is the same. The names are different. So the lady could vote in her center when the vice president is voting in his own center, but at the same time she could have her own other genuine ID card and she votes in another place, or votes within the proximity of that place, not far from there. So you could easily have one person voting twice or 3 times or 4 times. And that is basically what's worrying us right now, that there are so many. And that's why they're insisting on the manual. The idea is to get all these BVRs to fail the way they did in the whole of Garissa County and Northeastern Province the last election, by the way. Mm-hmm. That's how they did. That's how the victory was stolen in some of those parts. Mm-hmm. So and courtesy of those things, is that why you have some of the very senior people in the system right now who never won an election. So this thing has been rigged, simple and straightforward. It has already been rigged. And what did they do? They went ahead and what did they discontinued the process in which you can use your phone. Right now, you can't use your phone. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? You can't use your phone.
You can't use your phone to
and access that and cross-check.
The
problem is that in the past, when you do that, you put in your
ID number.
Yeah, you could get it.
All right. Okay. So the president now has given 3 days for this particular exercise by the National Registration Bureaus to issue the identity cards across the country. The opposition also, you're worried that this presidential directive, you want it to be applied across the board, covering every part of the country.
It's not across the board. The emphasis is only the strongholds of Jubilee. That's a simple matter.
Debarl.
This is you know the problem. You know the problem in this country. Eh? We tend to kind of shove under the carpet a lot of things, and much later we make a lot of noise and say this is the way things happen. It's important that we take note of these things before the mischief is effected.
Dr. Shem Ochuodho.
Debarl, I think what CS Nkaissery did is not permissible. Being clearly partisan as a government officer is not right.
Yes.
But that said, I think also it's incumbent upon him to encourage chiefs to do their bit. I wouldn't be so concerned if he was doing the same in Siaya or Garissa or everywhere else. But doing it in just one part of the country clearly is not right. But having said that, I think also what we call the opposition, the minority, we shouldn't just be seeing evil in literally anything and everything that's done. Because we're already blaming IBC for IDs. As far as I know, that's not the mandate of IBC. That's the mandate of the National Registration Bureau. They're the ones who issue IDs. So if there's a conflict in ID numbers, of course, the people to put this square onto their table is National Registration Bureau. But I dare also add all these technology things that are being talked about. I think in the bipartisan, the Joint Select Committee law, did talk of a technical committee where the political parties are represented. What are they doing in that committee? Because they're the ones to find out at what stage are the biometrics connected, or they're not connected, and if not, why are they not connected, and so on and so forth. Really, it should be the technical people in that committee that's giving us answers.
Right. Let's also hear from Agnes Wahome. Good morning to you.
Morning, Debarl, and everybody else and the viewers.
Right. Of course, you've been following this story of the ID, the voter registration and the ID issue as well. Do you think it's being carried out fairly?
I think it's unfortunate, and I'm happy that you asked that question, because I have heard Farah Maalim saying that he thinks that it is not fair, it's not distributed across the country. And I think making those kind of statements is alarming without any statistics or data. The head of state has asked the registrars, the director of registration of IDs, to actually ensure that they are released within the shortest time possible. And indeed, I think his timeline is 3 days. That, of course, sends a very strong message in terms of expediting the process of the IDs, because you cannot proceed to register as a voter without the ID. I am not aware that there is any skewed management of that process. And I would really take exception myself for somebody coming on the national television to say that, look, this is happening.
But what about the expression of concern?
I know that everybody, including Farah, the opposition, and it's a good thing, everybody is actually on the ground. Any other person, including the media, asking people to come out and register as voters, because the number that is expected to be achieved considering the problems the IBC has faced, the challenges, the commissioner is a day old, the chairman and his team is a day old in the office, is that clearly they also need to be assisted through all goodwill.
Okay.
And it's quite a difficult.
Right,
I have been on the ground.
What would you say?
I have been on the ground myself. The equipments are not working. You know, we talked about manual voter identification. And actually we are having a big problem because even the BVRs cannot take more than 2 hours. They have to be charged at shopping centers. They are not enough in every constituency.
That is really appalling, because these are the cases we've had even in 2013, where the BVRs could not even hold on for 2 hours because of the battery issues. Some are dysfunctional. I mean, there could have been a mock voter registration before this. Is that the case?
Attention has been put on individuals, on personalities of IBC, and they have been hounded out of the office. Whatever reasons that were there, we forgot, you know, maybe to address the capacity.
All right. Okay. Let me hear from Dr. Zani, because we have the stock excuse that yes, we had the commissioners and the whole process was scuttled because we had CORD and Jubilee and the select
and what
committee
time was
being
there?
in
What
Parliament.
time was there,
But
Debarl?
just a moment. Even if we didn't have a commissioner, the secretariat was there.
The secretariat was there.
The secretariat should have continued working, and of course, with these issues and the kinks that now we have should have been ironed out by the secretariat.
The secretariat has been there. These are issues. You see, the problem is we'll never be able to squarely address the problems of IBC if we keep coming to take sides about how we interpret what they have done. When issues are raised, when this issue of IDs is being raised, nobody should start saying that this is a non-issue, that this is an issue of opposition, that the reason why we're not taking it seriously is because this person has said it or the other person has said it. We're talking about a body that is so critical for this country, that this country withhold because of IBC. And therefore, all of us as stakeholders are very keen about what IBC does. And therefore, for every stage, and that's why right from the beginning, even from the Kriegler report, it was very clear that there must be consultation amongst stakeholders. For example, these BVR kids, what process were they procured from? For example, because if you look at Gambia and Ghana, they have done it very well. Tanzania, they've been able to do very well. There have been even proposals. Why don't we borrow this equipment if we are serious about making sure that we do it very well? Because the amendment law from the Select Committee was very, very clear on 3 components: the BVR, the EVID, the identification of voters, and also result transmission, that this is conducted very, very well. Now, we cannot have a situation now, 1, where we have the problem of BVR, 2, we have a problem of IDs. And this is not a minor issue, because apart from the case that Mheshimiwa Maalim has stipulated, we have the one for my own party leader, the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, same thing replicated. We have about 6 cases with IDs going to somewhere else. Now, this is not necessarily the responsibility of the registrar of identification of people. This is a responsibility of IBC, because at the end of the day, they need to be able to have a synchronization so that if, for example, ID is put, it can already be stipulated to a particular person at a particular polling station. They should be able to weave, because we're talking about, 1, a process from 2013 for registration of voters. We're talking about the massive voter registration that happened at the end of last year. We're talking about the last one that is taking place here. Where is this whole synchronized list? And you know, the worst thing is that if IBC now gives us a feeling that they're not really up to speed. And given all these things, if we talk about there were no commissioners, we know very well that the last set of commissioners who we went to ensure that they get out because of the way they were handling the issue actually went out, stayed on. So what were they staying on to do? So we have
what were they staying on to do? First of all, because we cannot be sounding like we are broken record. Every year in, every year out is the same cases. First of all, is the same identification crisis. Of the BVR are not really working. She raises a very good, valid concern. This particular BVRs were actually loaned to Burundi, right? We didn't hear of any crisis in Burundi as far as the BVR kits were concerned. Why is it that when we have them back, is when now we have issues? We'll come to you. Let's hear from Farah.
Debarl, you remember this, the French Revolution?
Yes.
And people were asking for bread. And the princess was wondering, why should people worry about bread? I mean, if they can't get bread, why don't they eat cakes? Right. You know what I mean? That's exactly what Alice, where she comes from, somebody can register and get his ID card in less than 2 weeks. Where I come from, it takes 10 years sometimes. The people who have got their women who have 3, 4, 5 children and who can't get their ID cards. So for her, it's a luxury. For me, it's a matter of survival. You know what I mean? We just don't have those facilities. And that's why we're talking like we're in two different countries. You see what I mean? We're talking like we're in two different countries. And the other bit is this. Why would you have two people with the same number of the ID card? You know, I'm not going to exonerate what you call the registration of persons. Mm-hmm. Why do you have one ID card number for two people? You understand my point?
Yes.
Why did we spend 110 billion shillings on those PVRs and they failed immediately?
Yeah, so somebody should answer these questions.
Nobody has gone to prison.
Yeah.
Nobody has been taken to court for having done this shoddy job. The taxpayers' money has been lost. We didn't get a clean election the last time. We're not likely to get a clean election again this time around. The Nigerians, the whole world has got these things that function. The only places they don't function is in Kenya. They are willing to loan these things to us. 78 million people voted in Nigeria. Ours is going to be what? 15,000, what, 22 million? That's a fraction of that. Why don't you borrow from them and use it?
Just a moment, Dr. Shem, don't you think maybe we need to interrogate also the itemized content of the contractual agreement that we had with the IBC and the supply of these BVR kits? Because they cannot be left off the hook like this. We need to have a provision of time on whether they really work or not, because we're not being told if they're being penalized because the BVR kits are not really working.
You're absolutely right.
Yes,
Debarl.
just a moment before you finish. And last time we saw also some of the EVIDs were declared redundant, barely even after we've just finished 5 years. But we've not been told if at all there has been any compensation for that. How comes within the span of even less than 5 years they're declared obsolete? Obsolete, not even redundant, obsolete.
You raise valid questions. But before I respond, let me compliment Bwana Chebakati and his committee for coming in as new commissioners. We wish them well. Secondly, I think if we choose a bipartisan hard stand, we're not going to get solutions. I think we should be, rather than bringing out the mistakes and the problems, we should be coming out more with solutions. Perhaps this is my free advice to the political parties, that we should be more proactive than reactive. I see a lot of reaction. You know, there is this problem, this is that, that's the da-da-da-da-da. But really the point is, what's the right forum to address this? IBC often meets the political parties, and I know for a fact last week on Monday, I think, they met the leaders of the political parties, particularly the two major coalitions. Were these issues raised with IBC? If so, why are they being raised here? Or what was the result out of those meetings? Yes. I also know there is the technical committee, which is supposed to be the one giving these answers. As a technical person, I feel very incompetent to say, because I don't know exactly what's happening. Are these biometrics networked or they're not networked? If they're not networked, why and why not? So I don't have those, but those questions should be answered by the technical committee. Yes. But the point that you raise also that's valid is that how come these BVRs are barely 5 years old? I think last time I did mention technology, electronics normally have a lifespan of 2-3 years. So 5 years ordinarily is a long period of time. But I'm also alive to the fact that these BVRs are only used once and then kept. So it's not the normal, like computers, like phones, their lifespan is normally 2-3 years. They need to have depreciated by that time for replacement. But then I think answers that we are not getting from IBC or from the technical committee, for me I would want to focus more on the technical committee. Yes. How come that we had 15,000 BVRs last time, now we are being told we have 7,000? Surely 50% I think is an overkill. What happened to the half in that period of time? We need these answers, but I don't think a national TV is the right forum to get those answers. The technical committees, if they did their bit, would give us answers. Also, when IBC meets the stakeholders, why don't they give solutions? Say, why don't we lease BVRs from Tanzania, from Ghana, or wherever else, that we can lease them so that we have answers. This is why I feel we should be giving more solutions to IBC as well, and in the hope that, and in the assumption that IBC is prepared to listen, than just pointing fingers. In terms of the president ordering chiefs to, or whoever is concerned, to issue IDs in 3 days, I think that's commendable, and I'm hoping that this is going to be done across board. But one major point that I don't think we are taking sufficiently seriously, in fact, often when people talk of manual, electronic, for me, sometimes I think it's diversionary. We're leaving the key points. For me, if you ask me what are the 3 most critical things in terms of credible elections, first one is the aspect of money. Second one is the aspect of free and fair nominations. Third one is the aspect of technology, which is where we seem to be focusing. But the other two, nobody seems to be talking about them. People use public resources to campaign. It's like there was the law that should have capped up campaign financing. But I was surprised the minority party, which I thought would have supported that, was the one that supposed, as Kenya Diaspora Alliance, we support capping of campaign finance.
Yes.
The only thing we had issues with were the amounts were horrendous. They were out of this world. We thought talking of billions, multiple billions, was really saying that, look, this is an exclusive club. But the principle of capping campaign finance is something we support. But we didn't see other parliamentarians coming up with options. So I think we're probably not focusing really where we need to. In terms of IDs, we do know that people in border districts or border counties, they have trouble getting IDs. We also know young, newly married women have trouble getting IDs because they are told to go back to their homes. Right. So these are the things that really should have been addressed, and I wish we could address them before the end of the voter registration.
Right, good gesture that is coming from the president, that this should be issued in 3 days. He raises the concern, of course, people from the border areas also have challenges in getting these particular IDs because the interrogation is a bit stiff and it's a bit rigorous before they get but they stay for months. I'm aware of a person who's actually waited for an ID for the last 6 months. Should this be happening?
Well, I'm increasingly getting a bit unable to agree with some of the statements Farah is making. It's talking about 7 years. I don't know. Maybe I think those are issues that they could have picked as a leadership in that region and find out the reasons why those kind of delays, because lamenting Debarl will not actually give us solutions, because every Kenyan is entitled to an identification card.
Yes.
When we talk of different places, of course factors and circumstances and the environments are different even within Kenya, because the border polarization and people crossing across the country to get IDs when they are not Kenyans is not a story. It's real, and it happens a lot during the elections, because politicians also at the border areas actually bring in people to actually register them as Kenyans. And if we are then going to have in 3 days somebody getting an ID who is not a Kenyan, then that is a good reason for them not to actually be issued with IDs until verification of those persons is done. The IBC, the issue of technical devices being used for 5 years, I also want to concede here and say, I'm not a technical person. That is not my area of strength. And therefore, I would actually doubt that BVRs secured or procured 5 years ago can be able to actually give us any good service after 5 years. Why I say that is because even the ones we are using are registering, one is registering about 70 people, I think, per day. And we have one for every 3 to 4 polling stations, and therefore we still have a capacity issue in that area. And so those are the issues we should be looking at. How can we ensure? How can we assist IBC to actually get more people registered? But when we come here every time with a story of condemning these people, suspecting that they are doing it to rig other people in, even before we actually even have a voter register. You will also recall, Debarl, that the case of auditing the register, has been a big issue. It's already in court, so that you will not even be able to say now we have even a voter register, because some people are already in court regarding the register that we have. And those people were incited and instigated by actually the court rejected the people who were even procuring the auditors for purposes of auditing the register. Is a story. Now even borrowing, I can't imagine Kenyans, especially from the opposition, and I say this with a lot of respect, would agree that we actually get across. I personally wouldn't think that that's the way to go. We go to Brudi to get their BVRs. Kenya has been in the lead.
All right.
So for me, I think we should have we can get enough funds to actually procure enough materials for elections. If we remove politics from the office of the IBC, we should be concentrating in asking voters to vote for us and finding out what problems and challenges they have, where the IEBC is actually busy registering voters.
All right, by asking voters to register, the politicians also are now...
And vote for us, yeah, it's true.
It is true, but now it seems also you as politicians shoehorning Wananchi to actually try and vote. If they don't actually register as voters, right, then you withhold services from them. A case in point is here, Moses Akaranga has been very categorical that residents without voters' cards will not be served by the county government. This is uncalled for. Right? What will be your sentiment that if I don't have the voters card, then I'm denied services in my county?
Well, I think that is a wrong approach, and voters are entitled to services irrespective of whether they are registered or not. But in terms of accountability, Kenyans need to know that the strength of accountability is also in having a voters card, because every 5 years you are in a position to actually determine the leadership and how your resources and governance of the entire country, other than your own region, will actually go. And I think it is
These
wrong.
are the mechanisms that you're talking about as politicians that you're using to actually make Wananchi get this voters card. Is that right? As you've heard, you cannot withhold services from Wananchi because of voters card.
I think what you've given is one example, but I think there are other examples, you know, because I think the effort has been done from different directions, and one of the directions is from communities themselves. And yes, there's the aspect where you say everybody has a right to vote and they should exercise that right freely. But I think also people feel that they've been disenfranchised because that right hasn't been put properly, and therefore we don't have the leader who we know will bring the development there. And some communities have taken that upon themselves to actually mobilize, you know. And we know, for example, even from the leadership, sometimes this happened in America where you've had Trump say, no matter what happens, come out. I think everybody's trying to make everybody come out. But I think different people are using different ways of doing it. And I know communities, one way or another, have also been trying to mobilize among themselves to say, you know, before you get this service, make sure that you have an ID so that you can actually vote, because otherwise you're bringing down this community.
And this is ridiculous. So we cannot even stop at Moses Akaranga. We have Mishi Mboko coming to the fore and saying also, and Esther Murugi, we quoted earlier, saying that even these men should be denied conjugal rights if they don't have a voter's card. So it seems that if I have to go to my house, then I need to come with my voter's card to show it to my wife for me to get my conjugal rights. Farah,
you know, Debarl, I mean, we are in a free society. And anybody can say it's not a criminal offense. You know what I mean? It's I don't know if somebody would want to take it as a civil matter and seek a civil litigation.
But
and only then you have to have a local standard.
Some people will take this leaders very seriously.
But I'm telling you, it's that somebody, and that you have to have a local standard, which means if your wife denies you, then you can go to court and say that she has denied me this right. You know what I mean? But the point is that, I mean, those things are neither here nor there. The important thing is the critical, substantive issues of this country. The future of this country hangs in the balance. You see what I mean? If you don't have a free and fair elections, and that presumption is there. And you see, Debarl, we almost became a failed state. We almost went the way many other countries went in 2007, 2008. And we wanted the international community to come and help us and to sort out our issues. The Waki report, the Kriegler report was very categorical. People have to have confidence and faith in the electoral process. And the only way they can have confidence and faith in the electoral process is there to exercise the one man, one vote, and for every vote to be accounted for. And no more than those people who have voted. That's why the BVR, the voter identification, all these things had to be put in place. Now, if they don't work, they don't function, and we believe they don't function not because they don't function, that this technology has failed. This technology seems to be functioning everywhere else except our country. It's only failing because people don't want it to function. And then what do you have? And the moment we now cry foul about this, somebody out there says, oh, opposition is always talking about, opposition is never giving out. Look, we are not in IEBC. It's not the government or the opposition that's in IEBC. What we want is a free and fair process conducted by an independent body.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, Isaac Hassan's body never did that.
All right,
we don't want to have a situation. Let me just finish. We don't want to have a situation right now when these machines are going to fail because it took ages for the commission to come in. We cannot procure others from anywhere else. It is too late, and then we're going to go for manual on what you have, and then of course it's back to the same old story again.
Debarl, it's good we're saying let all Kenyans eligible take their cards and vote. I dare add, what's not being spoken is that except for the diaspora, because they're supposed to start registering on 1st of February. But that notwithstanding, I should also say, I think what Governor Akaranga is doing is unconstitutional. There's nowhere in law where it said the public sector would deny you service if you don't have an ID. So with due respect, in as much as we are free to use whatever method we want to encourage people, and allow me to take the this opportunity to encourage Kenyans, all Kenyans who are eligible to take the voter's card. I know there are some who are frustrated for one reason or the other. They're not thinking of voting. I think we need to recognize that we only have a chance once in every 5 years when we can elect the leaders we deserve. So to that extent, those Kenyans who have opportunity to register need to register, take their vote, and decide whoever they want to elect. But having said that, I think we also need to recognize the fact that it's incumbent upon our leaders to encourage the voters to take the card, not so much that they are voted for. Even their opponents. I'm waiting to see the president go to what are considered to be called strongholds, encourage them to take voters' cards. I'm also waiting for the opposition leaders to do the same, to go to areas they consider to be Jubilee strongholds, to do the same. This is really the Kenya of the future that we want. But I'm a bit disappointed that both sides of the political divides, it's the same politics that was done by the parents 50, 60 years ago that's still coming to play. Really, Kenyans have moved. There are Kenyans who, in as much as we keep boxing them into these ethnic cocoons, want to get out of it. And I think it's incumbent upon the leaders.
Okay, let's hear from Alice, then we'll come to you.
You see, the temperature is high, Debarl, right now. And so when I wouldn't think that it is unusual for example, the called leadership across the board, because there are like 4 principles, going to their strongholds, because first and foremost, the people are easily able to identify quickly with them, and we have a very short time. So therefore, even Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, going to the areas where, you know, and actually in our region, I think we have even maybe bigger volumes of people without the ID or idle IDs, uncollected IDs, over 3 million IDs. Even as we are saying, we register fresh IDs. So, and I'm expecting that he will actually go to every other place within the short time, and we basically have left other things. You can see the government in its entirety, including the CSAs, are also actually going to encourage people to vote. That's not a bad thing, I think, Debarl. You will see, I am expecting also that every other area we will see the president, we will see the court leadership in Muranga, for example, because also he has supporters there encouraging people to come out, so that even unity of the country as we approach elections. And we should speak less of disunity and then speak more of cohesiveness, even as we know, because we have only 6 months to elections.
Thank you.
And statements like, oh, you know, it's a very serious thing, we are going to have a debacle, you know, these people are preparing the country for violence. Why can't we say we are encouraging people not to listen to politicians when they preach violence and conflict? Because you have to give Kenyans hope. No Kenyan would want us to fight on 9th of August. And so therefore, me, I think it is wrong for us to continuously say, you know, transparency, you know, is subject to this. We are going to see the country going down. I think that is wrong, Debarl.
All right.
Let me just input a bit, please.
Can we
just a very quick one. I think one, it's true, and I think most of the leadership across the board is trying to move to different directions, I think, to give that sense of unity. But I think we have to be very careful about a certain narrative, and that political interference, especially from opposition, is what causes confusion or disorganization. IBC. When IBC is procuring, for example, kits, they do it on their own. I think we have to be very careful about the narrative, and even that narrative that we are causing violence. How are we causing violence? We are actually pinpointing, we're actually avoiding violence by pinpointing and saying, IBC, we need to set our standards to this point so that we can actually do it well. Because what are we targeting? A free and fair election. We're looking at the areas where there's a problem. When we say there's a problem with the IDs, there is a problem. Let it be addressed. Let us come and stakeholders find that it has been addressed. And just to answer what had been queried earlier, it happens we have this stakeholders meetings and we give the way forward. But sometimes the discourse ends there. When it comes to application, because you remember we've discussed about these issues, BVR kids, many times. But when it comes to the implementation, that's where the problem is. I think the standard has been set, and it's been set in Africa. It's been set in Tanzania, it's been set in Gambia, it's been set in Ghana, it's been set in Nigeria. I think we need just to all watch, give IBC all the support. We are all happy to give IBC all the support. IBC, on the other hand, has to come out clearly, transparently, and show us the processes, and never before go to a point where we say this didn't work because of one, two, or the other. Because the problem is that we have a precedent of 2012, 2013, where already people saw these things, and people perceive that when these things go wrong, one, they're made to go wrong, two, they're made to go wrong for a reason, that there's a skew. So that's what people are trying to address. They're not just saying we want or we're predicting violence. Nobody can be able to do that.
Thank you.